Hello. Of course, Marley puts herself first in our lineup of people.
I just clicked.
Oh, how
There was
convenient
no
for you.
thought. There was
Sure,
no thought
sure.
to it at all.
Welcome, everyone, to Age of Geek, the podcast. As I bump my microphone, I'm a professional. We're so excited today to be talking with Marley, and Robert, and our guest today, Branden.
I'm on a non-Brandon Sanderson episode.
Yeah.
I don't know how that worked out.
Finally.
Your goal is to tie in Branderson in this episode. So,
All right,
just so you know.
we'll make Jake and Blake proud.
Yeah,
I mean, you
we
just
have
did.
expectations for you.
You just did that, so I think you're good.
There we go. We mentioned his name on it. I've met my contract minimum.
Is your name originally Branden, or did you change that after you read his book?
Oh yeah, it was completely. My name was Robert before, and then I met Robert, and I was like, okay, I've got to go back to the drawing board. And I read a Brandon Sanderson book, and it was all downhill from there.
Now we know. Now you know the etymology.
And knowing is half the battle.
Is that the study of knowing names?
Words?
Of naming things? Etymology?
Yes.
I know some things.
Yes, it is.
But we are excited to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, the third tonight, which came out. What was the date? The release date?
May 3rd?
May 5th.
May 5th.
May the 5th. Oh, they chose a Star Wars day to release the Guardians movie?
I mean, that's the day after Star Wars Day.
Isn't it May
It's
the
all
5th?
Disney.
There we go.
May the 4th be with you, Revenge of the 5th.
May the
Revenge of the 6th.
4th. But I did see Guardians on May 4th, so...
I was going to make in the title a reference to Revenge of the Sith, but I couldn't Guardianize it. I wasn't feeling creative, so I just left it.
The Guardians kick back. Oh, wait. Strike back. That one.
Return of the Guardians.
I know. I
the
wanted
Guardians
to...
Awaken.
The last of the Guardians.
Gamora is alive.
There we go. I was trying to remember the experiments names, and so I Googled it, and it took me to a PETA website, so I quickly left that.
Oh, goodness.
Because it was a graph. Anyways, that's a long tangent. We're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
PETA might come up.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it next to a child, like a 7 or 8 year old child, and I would not suggest bringing your children to this movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's a reason it's PG-13, and even then, maybe even some younger teens might. I had a hard time with it. Some of the scenes, it was really difficult because I'm a huge animal lover, and I cried. The most random stories, some random person that I follow on Instagram, like a famous person, they were talking about their dog that they had found out that their dog is sick and they had to put him down, and I started crying. You guys.
Or the videos of people like service members who come home and their dogs are all excited for them.
Oh my
those
gosh.
get me every time.
Oh my goodness.
Or what's the Dodo organization when they do the rehabilitation of animals? I sob. I sob seeing a little emaciated sheep come back to life and be happy.
Oh.
Welcome to the saddest Age of Geek podcast ever.
For real.
Animals.
In the arms of an angel.
Oh my goodness.
I will submit, it might be different episode topic. They need better rating systems because PG-13 is a broad depiction of, I don't know, if I took my kid to a movie that said some swears, that'd be one thing. But if I took her to this movie thinking that it was just some swears she was going to hear, and then having the story of Rocket Raccoon being experimented on, I would not be okay.
So let's get this out of the way right now. This is a full spoiler podcast.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely. Yes. If you have not watched it, go and watch it.
Please
come back and listen to us.
We'll wait.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Is this when I go do another outfit change? No.
Yes, this is exactly when you go. That's how this works. Yeah.
No, we're not waiting.
The other Guardians of the Galaxy movies were PG-13 as well, though.
Yes, they all are. I mean, I think all Marvel movies are PG-13.
Yeah, and so it's not... okay, I do have issues with studios who kind of bait and switch you. Back when Deadpool became a thing, I know Fox and Marvel aren't and Disney weren't all the same happy family back then, but when Deadpool the movie came out on Disney XD, there was a Spider-Man series, and Deadpool was a reoccurring character, and he was just kind of snarky and funny. He was not the
Crass.
Deadpool that everybody knows now. And so I think he was 4 years old at the time or something like that, said to me, "Dad, there's a Deadpool movie. I want to go see that. He is absolutely hilarious." I'm like, "No, absolutely not."
I'm not old enough to see a Deadpool movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, so when they have this media that is aimed towards younger children, and then all of a sudden they throw something else out there, I do take a little bit of a not offense, because that's too strong of a
No,
word,
but I think it's okay to take offense at that.
it's frustrating as a parent, because I've got 4 kids. And they run the gamut. I've got a 14-year-old down to a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And my 2 older ones, I can take to this movie. My youngest one, I could take the movie because he's 2 and he wouldn't sit through it anyway.
Yeah.
But my 8-year-old daughter, I'm like, there is no way I'm taking you to this in the movie theater. Let alone at 8 years old. Like, let's give it some time. Even my 11-year-old, I was like, we'll see.
Yeah.
So.
They like stuff that types. My daughter watches a lot of crafting videos, and they'll do crafts of like Huggy Wuggy and Squid Games. And so like it's not bad content, but it's not like, yeah, like you're saying, I'm not gonna let my kids see Squid Games.
Again,
Well,
am I
going
old
back to
enough to
Steph's
watch
original
Squid Game?
point, going back to Steph's point, PG-13, when it was brought into the MPAA rating system, because PG back from when God was a boy until they brought in PG-13 covered a huge gamut of content, and it was up to a certain hard line, and then they were like R. And if you look back at some of the movies in the 70s, 80s, and up to the mid to late 80s, I believe, is when PG-13 came out, when they finally did it, and they cut back what they allowed in PG movies versus where they could start at how far they could go with a PG-13 movie. Looking at the movies that came before that, they ran that entire spectrum, and it was pretty much PG and then R, and if it was PG, it was parental guidance suggested, and good luck.
Oh, I think almost everyone has a story of like watching a movie with their parent and their parent being like, I don't remember this being in there. John Hughes films, there's full frontals, there's so much. And yeah, and they're great, but yeah.
Yeah,
Watching-
PG-13 was introduced in 1984, so anything
Okay.
before that
Oh,
was just
wow.
whatever.
For those
That's
of you who remember that far back.
I
Monty
wasn't born.
Python and the Holy Grail is PG.
Is it?
Jaws is PG.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Well, and isn't even like Psycho or something, or like, and even all of the Friday the 13th movies, like a lot of those, like kind of even like slasher horror movies.
If they came out before 84, they were PG.
Mm.
Now,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I actually wouldn't mind going back to G, PG, and R, because it puts the onus back on the parent.
Yes.
Like, that is the argument that is always being made. People should let me parent. Well, if you are going to make that argument, you should parent. We shouldn't have to tell you what's appropriate for your child. Because I know some 13-year-olds who this Guardians of the Galaxy movie is not appropriate for. And I
Yeah.
know some 10-year-olds who could go see it with no problem. It just depends on the child. And the parents are the best ones who are equipped to know that child, usually.
I agree. With that. And that's all to say, this has some really dark parts in the movie. I think they definitely hit hard with the horror aspect, the body horror especially of this movie.
Did it
And
really hit any
dysmorphia
harder
even.
than Toy Story did?
Okay, well that's a different story. All right. Toy Story is a world that shouldn't, if you think about it too hard, it is horrific.
Think about Sid's bedroom.
Oh
It
my
had
God.
the
Or his
same vibes as
backyard.
Sid's bedroom. Yeah.
It was scary. Like growing up, like I remember watching Toy Story and kind of like these are not my favorite scenes. Sid is scary. Like it was a thing, definitely for younger kids.
So what I'm getting here is if your kids have trouble with the Sid scenes in Toy Story,
Mm-hmm.
Wait for this one.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good comparison, actually.
because there was the rabbit. I can't remember her, Floor.
Floor.
Uh, Sweetest thing in the world, looks
Like
terrifying.
like
Yes.
it's just like the doll's head on the spider legs.
Yes,
in Toy
yes.
Story, but
That's what made me think of Toy Story.
Well, and it's like
yeah.
appearances can be deceiving too, because it was like, yeah, same thing happened in Toy Story. Like that little head on the spider legs looked really freaky, but then like once, who was it? Was Woody?
Buzz.
Buzz
Did you
Woody?
say
What did I
did you say was?
Who's
wasn't Woody? Wow. But yeah, like when they were
They fixed Buzz and
that's right.
surprised Woody.
That's right.
I
But
have
yeah,
seen
it
every Toy
was
Story
thank you. It's been a
so
while.
many times. So
I'm like, who is there?
so many times.
Yes, but yes, no, they like
So
again,
many.
he looks scary, but it was actually like one of like the nicest little like toy creature things, whatever you want to call it. And kind of same thing with these guys. Like they were super, super like nice, but they looked rough. I mean, even Rocket looked really rough.
Rocket, I mean, but Rocket has looked rough every time we've seen him or seen his back in anything. You always have these
Mhm.
things of where did this come
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
And maybe we should go back and go with
Yeah,
this is actually a
we went
Guardians of
on
the
a
Galaxy, not a Toy
tangent.
Story podcast.
Surprise.
But do we want to start at the beginning and then work our way back to Rocket, or do you just want to start here and then jump around?
Start at the very beginning.
Okay, well,
Very good place to start.
which is usually a good place to start, although sometimes starting in the middle and working, never mind.
We've already done it. It's fine.
When you start off at nowhere, which is everybody sees this and it's like, oh, this is great, and after seeing the holiday special, for better or worse, we understand that they've the Guardians have kind of built a community there, and we get to see that, and we get a nice musical opening like we've had with every other Guardians movie, and then chaos rains down upon them in the form of Adam Warlock.
What are our thoughts on Adam Warlock?
I have read something where somebody said he's like the Vision just in golden red, and it kind of made me laugh. But I like the fact that we've seen, well, without seeing him, in the end of Guardians 2, I think it was one of the stingers. Aisha has the cocoon that houses what is going to be Adam Warlock when it hatches. So I was like, oh, good, he's hatched. We're going just full on right out of the gate. So that was, for me, it was good. Little different interpretation than in the comics, but that's the MCU for you.
I read an article on Mary Sue about how he is the ultimate himbo, which a himbo is a attractive but unintelligent man, according to Urban Dictionary.
Oh my goodness.
And so you just know he's not, with that kind of explanation, he's not going to be a character of great depth. But I mean, that's not necessarily the worst thing when there's so many stories going on in this movie and then continuation that I think is probably going to be happening.
Well, and it really seemed like he wasn't really introduced very well. So he kind of was just there. But all you know is that he's pretty strong, he's pretty powerful. Everyone was having a really hard time like keeping up with him and controlling him, and he did a lot of damage there at Nowhere. And even just like his whole character throughout the rest of the film, like I don't really know what guys, honestly, I couldn't tell you what his purpose was really. I mean, I know what they say it obviously in it, but like even then I just feel like if he wasn't even in the movie, like I feel like we wouldn't have totally missed him, except for the tease that we got in the end of the prior movie in that he was coming. So I kind of feel like this was just a setup, and he's younger. He's kind of fresh out of the birthing pod or whatever it is. Yeah.
Like we all are.
Yeah. And so like he's young and dumb, and he's going to be great. And we're going to see more of him. Like, cause I played the Guardians of the Galaxy video game. I'm like tripping all over my words today, you guys. I'm sorry about that, but I played the video game, and Adam Warlock, yeah, that one, Steph.
He's
Yeah,
right here on my desk.
it was actually really enjoyable, and it was fun. Different side of the Guardians. Felt like a little more like comic booky. But yeah, so Adam Warlock was in it, and he was like a mature, like he was well established Adam Warlock, and they had to go to him for help, and he was just very like stoic and very like on the book and just like, no, I'm not going to help you, but then they convince him and he does help him, blah blah blah. But it was just like a very different Adam Warlock that I saw in the game. And then like, because I want to say I was a little disappointed in how they portrayed him in the movie.
Well,
Not that I hated it, I wish we could have gotten more.
okay, so between Steph's comment about him being a himbo and your comment about him not being the brightest, the sharpest knife in the drawer, there's an interesting juxtaposition that we can use between Adam Warlock and Rocket. They're both created for specific purposes, and they're both flawed in their own ways. You could say that Adam's mental development isn't quite there, whereas Rocket was created as a stepping stone. And they're both kind of different takes on Frankenstein's monster, if you look at it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
can
like
see
that.
See,
So-
in my opinion, I think that Adam Warlock is there to give them somewhere to go. Like,
Mhm.
if they bring him in as this super mature, stoic kind of guy, then he's really boring in the movies because he has
Yes.
no growth.
Yeah,
you start him
true.
out here, and you get the character growth, and because that's really what Guardians of the Galaxy is about. They saved the galaxy, but the movies are not about them saving the galaxy. The movies are about them growing as individuals. And we even got a little bit of that for Adam Warlock
Mhm.
in this movie.
Yeah. Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
True.
His
it
little
gives
like
him some room
furry
to grow.
friend. What was that? But it was cute.
It looks so familiar. Like, I feel like I've seen that in another show. Like, and maybe it was just in the previous Guardians. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, are you talking about the little brown fuzzy creature?
Yes.
Well, wasn't he with one of the Ravagers in
Yes,
the earlier
Yeah.
scenes? Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a cute little
And maybe even in volume 2. Because he
so maybe
definitely
we
looked
saw it
familiar.
there.
Yeah, he's been around. For sure.
The character's name, the creature's name is Blurp.
Oh, of course.
Blurb. He's cute.
And he was formerly owned by the Ravager Fitzgibbonok.
Of course.
And
We
Was
all
that the
know
one? Was that the one that
Fitzgibbonok.
got tortured and killed?
Yes.
Point-
And
the
Warlock
point got across.
adopted him after he accidentally killed Fitz.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's a
Spoiler alert.
tender story no matter what.
But it did give him some growth and development that I don't know that we would have gotten from him otherwise. And Brandon is 100% spot on that if we'd gotten the Adam Warlock that we see in the comics now, for example, it'd have been like, okay, it's one note. We have nothing to learn from, well, nothing for him to do or to learn or to grow from. He's this battle weary, ridiculously powered being that it's just like kind of like Thor was at the beginning of Love and Thunder, just like, okay, call in Warlock and we'll just go over here and have a beer.
Is he like Dr. Manhattan-esque in the comic?
In ways, we'll just put him at that power level relative to the Guardians, for example.
I was in a panel with Robert for Remote Con about the Watchmen TV show. And I made a comment about Dr. Manhattan that was very off because I hadn't finished the series. And I just need to admit that because it's been on my heart the last 2 or 3 years where I said something, and it was because I hadn't finished the series and didn't know the twist of Dr. Manhattan. So there we go.
And I think
glad
I
we
avoided
could-
spoiling that for you.
I don't think you did with the panel we were on. Because I should have anyways. I'm glad we could clear the air, Robert.
I feel better for it.
Oh
Yes.
my goodness. Great moment.
But
So
the other thing was he comes in and he creates havoc and creates the catalyst for the rest of the movie.
Muffs
So-
up Rocket real good.
Yes.
Oh.
And we find out Rocket has a kill switch.
Kill switch on his heart.
Yeah, which is just awful.
And yeah,
I mean, I
Yeah.
think we can all agree with that statement.
Yeah,
that-
I am,
like,
I
yeah.
am
And
firmly against
obviously,
kill
yeah.
switches.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first AOG against kill switch.
Very awful.
except for some machinery, because like Terminator should come with them.
That
Terminators,
okay.
OpenAI,
I
things
guess
like
you
that.
heard it here first. Age of Geek is mostly against kill switches.
Apparently, we're just afraid of AI, is what I'm gathering.
I mean, yeah.
For good reason. No.
It totally hits the superhero trope on the head too. This entire movie with like the way they mess up these worlds and locations, and like it's just totally, that's not a big deal. We're going to mess up nowhere. What is it? Is it? And
Yeah,
then it's
nowhere.
fine.
It'll be all right.
It'll get worked out in the
We'll
end.
call in damage control. They'll come fix stuff. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Millions
will
of
come and
dollars of
clean it up.
infrastructure gone.
Can I just say, though, like we kind of glossed over as we were talking about Adam Warlock, but the whole Gamora relationship with Peter, like that was handled, like we were told so much about their relationship between the movies and the holiday specials just by watching her take drunk Star-Lord back to his bedroom, and how she was doing that, and how she's like,
Gamora or
She was-
Nebula?
Oh, no,
or
Nebula.
sorry, Nebula. I said Gamora, didn't I?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
did.
Nebula.
I was
Like
so confused.
Nebula's character is one that just slowly became like, okay, this is a side character to, she is
Integral.
integral,
Mhm.
and like was able to convey so much with just a little bit of body language. Apparently I watched an interview with James Gunn when they the body that Nebula was carrying was a fake. It was about
Yes.
35
Oh yeah,
pounds.
I saw
Yes,
that
I
too.
watched a TikTok about that, and
Mhm.
it was so funny.
And they were trying so hard to make you think that that was so that they could use it for dead Star-Lord in that
Yes.
interview.
Oh, yeah, you
Oh
totally
my
thought it was dead
gosh.
Star-Lord.
Yeah, everybody, like the marketing, the trailers, everything were all designed to make you think that Star-Lord might die in this one. Heck, up until the very end, like you're like, oh, maybe he does die.
Yeah.
You
I-
definitely question it at one
Mhm.
point. You're like, is this the moment?
Yeah.
And especially knowing that this is the last in this series of movies, you kind of expect people to die or something big. And I usually am like for that sounds awful. I'm usually for that because I feel like
Pro-death.
it's more realistic.
Mhm.
It's not so like everything tied up in a happy bow.
Oh, all the main
You've
characters
never read a comic book,
survived.
have you?
But I actually was not angry that, again, spoiler alert, no one dies. Well, a lot of people die, but no
I was
one.
going to say, there were a few deaths in this
Some
movie.
Some people, like a
Whole
whole planet.
A lot
But
of people die, but none of the Guardians die.
yeah, they're all fine,
all
including
got plot
Nebula.
Yes. Okay, why did they bring back Gamora?
Also, did we know that she joined? Like, when did she join? I feel like it was very random that all of a sudden she was there with the Ravagers.
And
Did
that
we
was
have context for that?
no. And I
Okay.
think that it was
Okay, so the context that we did have was she was always looking for a family outside of Thanos.
I thought she
Okay.
was still with Thanos. So when did we even get word that she had left Thanos?
Endgame.
At the
and-
end of Endgame, maybe?
Well, just
She
before
just
the
walks
end,
off.
Oh,
the second
I
time
guess.
heist,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
and they brought not quite as old Gamora to the present to
Right.
betray Thanos. I had to look that one up. It's like, she's back? How can she be back? Because she fell off of a pretty big cliff.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that Peter is still broken up about that. And, you kind of broke the universe, Peter, but, 5 years later, you're still kind of mooning over your ex-girlfriend. Okay.
This was a unique take on the fridging the girlfriend trope.
Yes.
Like
Yes,
that
it
was something that I was like, okay, like, yes, they killed off his girlfriend for character development essentially, but
Mhm.
then they brought her back. And so it's not quite as bad as being like, okay, we're just going to kill this character because she's a woman and we're a comic book and we do those things. But it still essentially was, okay, we're going to kill this woman so that this man can have some growth.
Right.
Which is a big problem, actually. If you look at a lot of Marvel movies historically, the female characters die so that the male character can soldier on and be heroic. Yes,
It's
Mr.
not.
Feige,
Yeah,
putting that on you.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
know that's a thing.
it's not my favorite.
Although
trope.
I really did like the take that they didn't end up together. I was
I
very
was pleasantly
happy with
surprised with
that.
that.
Yeah, it's
She gets
well,
to
it's
go
gonna.
home to her chosen family. He gets to be reunited with
Mhm.
his.
So what nobody's saying is that she's actually, make sure you get the right one, Thomas Riker. Thank you,
What?
Brandon.
It's a Star Trek joke.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's lost on me and stuff.
Transporter accident, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically
okay.
you get two of the same person, and the second person takes their personality in a different direction than the character you followed for years, basically. So we get that with this Gamora, and you keep seeing Peter trying to wear her down, like we loved each other. You should just give it a chance, and she's just kind of like, I'm not that person. And Peter's continued resistance to that concept until the very end, when he's like, I miss the you that I remember, but you're okay. You're going to be okay, and
Right.
I think that he's going to be okay.
There's always that kind of, I felt until like the very end with their conclusion. There's always this like, I don't want to say hope because I didn't want it to happen, but this feeling that she would be like, I do remember that, and I'm like, yeah, let's like get it back together. And I'm glad they didn't do that take because it's been done.
Mhm.
Well, and it would have felt forced, I think,
Yeah,
too,
it
Yes.
would have.
because we had such like a small amount of time. I mean, even having Gamora kind of there in the first place, not that I have anything against Gamora or this version of Gamora, it also just, I don't know. It seemed like she was just kind of there,
Yeah.
and I felt
Same with Sylvester Stallone.
oh yeah.
He was just kind of there.
Well, he was in volume 2. He was
For a
he was
minute.
part of the Ravagers. Yeah, the whole group. But I don't know. They kind of just like created this like, yep, here's a way for Gamora and Zoe Saldana to have some, screen time in this movie. Like a
We
lot of
still have
screen
a
time.
contract with her. We need to we need
We
to get
have
her
to
into
figure
another
it
movie.
out.
How
Yeah.
do we do this?
Okay, to be a little
Yeah.
less cynical than my companions here, I think that it was a nice way, since they were putting a bow on everything, since they were tying up this incarnation of the Guardians. It was nice to be able to have her back, even if it was not the same her,
Yeah.
to be there to be part of the group, even if she's looking at it as a dispassionate observer and even tertiary antagonist to some degree.
Yeah, she was
And
just
just,
grumpy the whole time. And it
but I mean,
just
Gamora was kind of grumpy in the first Guardians too.
yeah, I guess
She
that's
was
true.
slightly grumpy in that first movie.
I
And
guess
their whole mission to the fleshy planet or whatever it is,
Orgus,
the
Orgosphere.
stylization of their rainbow jumpsuits is like so very cool.
I loved
It
that. That
was
was
so
fun.
very fun. And it reminds you of the first Guardians where you're like, what is this? This is so cool and fresh. And I
And
feel like
nobody
we're
talks
coming
about the
back to
fact that
that.
Mantis cannot float, fly, or land properly.
No,
my
she's
God.
just
It
like
was
whoop.
awesome.
I kind of feel like Mantis stole the show a little bit. Like I feel like they definitely gave her like more screen time too. And even like, we saw a lot more of her in the holiday special
Mhm.
as well. I mean, because it was kind of her and Drax, it's kind of a thing with them. But like even more so in volume 3, like we saw a lot of her, which was I mean, she's funny. I think it was fun.
We did an AOG episode on the holiday special, and I think my takeaway was Mantis and Drax were both annoying, and I didn't feel that in this movie. So,
Yeah.
good
Yep.
job, James Gunn.
Yeah, that is
Another
true.
person who's kind of inserted in, James Gunn's brother,
Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn. He
I
had to
don't know,
he
he's
had to get
fine.
the arrow thing, the whistle. We had to finally see him get that down for
Okay.
Yondu. Steph, it was for Yondu.
I mean, he'll always be Kirk from Stars Hollow.
It's true.
Uber.
Oh dear Lord, he was.
Yes.
Wow. There's
Yep.
a flashback. Thank you for that, Steph.
Mhm, always.
Wow.
Yes. Oh my
But I
Wait
think
god.
that
for
Craggle,
mine and Robert's episode on Gilmore Girls
stay tuned.
recap.
Um,
Yeah.
Kraglin to me is kind of like all of the Guardians have their quirky personality things and their idiosyncrasies. Kraglin to me has always been this guy who's just kind of trying to do his best to follow orders and a little bit Gomer Pyle-ish sometimes, doesn't quite get
Yeah.
it right, but he's doing the best he can.
That's
And
a
and
good description.
and Kraglin is just like your everyman who's just like you've got your guys who are your ace performers, and you're my go-to for everything. And then you've got the other guy who's kind of like, well, I know that if I
You're
give him
thinking
this
of a
job,
specific person right now, aren't you?
no,
The other guy. Got it.
no.
You
You
can
know, and there's
say it. Marley's off screen right now.
but no, but Kraglin for me, somebody asked me who's your favorite Guardian, and I was like,
Gosh.
I actually kind of like Kraglin just because Kraglin is doing the best he can. Just to, he's a little bit of a screw up, but he's trying really hard.
Can I tell you, like in movies, when you kind of get a telegraphed forced hero moment, I usually roll my eyes. But with Kraglin, when I'm like, okay, this is clearly the point that he uses his arrow and a
Mhm.
super cheesy Yondu vision.
Yes.
And I'm like, he's gonna do it, yes. And I was super excited for Kraglin because it was like he gets to be the hero
Yes.
where he is never the hero.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or get it
okay.
right, because he's always like so clumsy.
And that's what I was saying while you were away. I was just saying like Kraglin's the guy who is like, I got a job, but I'm not sure I'm going to give it to you because,
Yeah.
but he's just trying his best. I mean, not quite Barney Fife, not just like the last person on the person who's not even on your list, but he's like, well, okay, and he got to bring Nowhere to the High Evolutionary
Yes,
ship.
he did.
Okay, that was cool. Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Because I didn't know they could do that. I didn't know that was like. Did they do that, or was that always a thing? Like, did they
I
jerry
do
rig
not recall it being a thing in the comics.
the Celestial's head, his skull? Because
Yeah,
that's what
we're
Nowhere
just gonna strap
is.
some engines on it and go.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
all it takes, just a little bit of force, mass acceleration.
It's straight physics. It'll be
Yeah,
fun.
I thought that was really cool. Like because it's kind of like, it's kind of like their home. It's their like headquarters, their base. I mean,
And it's the head of a dead celestial. I mean, it's all in one. It's a one-stop shopping thing.
It's solid, but it's also kind of risky too, because like all the other people that are there.
Solid,
It's
but
just a
also
city.
kind of ethereal.
Well, what about? It's also from what we saw in Guardian. I can't remember which one it was now. It's kind of a spaceport. So what happens when everybody comes bringing their goods looking for Nowhere and it's not there?
Oh
What
yeah,
happens then?
It's under new management. We move occasionally.
it's a treasure hunt. You have to, or what are those things when you do the
Scavenger
the
hunt.
GPS
Geocaching.
geocaching?
And there's a lot of geo to cache or non-geo to cache now.
Yes.
Oh goodness. But yes, I had to do a quick wardrobe change into my hoodie from
Approved.
it's based on their new uniforms, and like I just want to talk about that for a second, because I want to tie in what we were talking about with Gamora before, but I loved that they all had matching outfits when I mean like all of the Guardians, like
It's branding.
yeah, like they all had like the matching things, and it was also fun because it was like their thing. Like it
Mhm.
was a callback to Ravagers, because that's what they still are.
Mhm.
Star-Lord is still a Ravager, but they are also kind of their own team, and they've come so far and done so much that they have kind of like earned their own way to be like, no, this is us. It's our branding.
So they've come so far and done so much. Would you say that in the end it doesn't really matter?
yeah.
I was gonna say they've come so
Fired.
far, but they've got so far to go.
Far to go.
Fired.
But no, I was gonna say with Gamora though, like I think if it what I wish again with her just kind of being there and grumpy and just kind of sort of adjacent to the team. I feel like if anything, she should have been wearing the uniform too. I think and maybe it was just kind of more of their way of showing like she is separate from this group and she is different than,
The foreshadowing.
yeah,
I
like
would
she's
think so.
she's not part of it, but it would have been also just cool, and just for the sake of, when they're being all cool and walking down, and they're all in their matching uniforms and she's not, and you're just like, can they can it all match? Like, I don't know. That's just me, but I also just like am a huge fan of this like more classic look with like the dark bluish
It definitely
tealish
inspired
color.
by the comics.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually have randomly I have like a Star-Lord action figure. He's like only like this big and he's wearing that suit. So yeah, when I saw it in like the trailers and stuff, I was like, yeah, we're getting some classic stuff going. I like this.
Would it have been any better if she'd been wearing like the full Ravager red outfit, just as a semi tie, but not quite the same?
I think she should have at least been doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
'Cause
instead she just kind of looked like assassin Gamora, like when we first met her in volume 1.
I think
And-
she kind of was until the end of this movie. I think she was, because I mean, you think about her journey as Gamora in Guardians 1 and 2, and it took her some time to become one of the Guardians.
Yeah.
And it took her some time to be part of the team rather than just Assassin Gamora. And so they hit reset on that character. She still has the same desires. She still is trying to find her new family. She's still trying to find where she fits in. She still feels a little bit like a lone wolf.
Mhm.
But then by the end of the movie, they give her what she's looking for. And so I didn't mind her as much, I think, as things like, yes, there were times they could have used her better, but that would have been hard to dance around. Like, how would people feel about this?
Sure.
But the fact that, if you liked Gamora as a character and not Gamora as a possession of Peter Quill,
Or
then,
Thanos.
or Thanos even at that point, then you're happy for her by the end of this movie because she got what she's looking for.
And I think that
Right.
her ending shot, the pure joy that she had on her face at that very last shot for her, I think shows that she, unlike Bono, she found what she was looking for.
This is the musical
Oh
episode, if
my
anyone was wondering.
God. Yeah. And Zoe Saldana, she's just like a queen of action movies, honestly.
In
She
space
is,
action movies.
yeah. She's great at what she does.
So yeah, they had to give her plenty of screen time because she's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a character who had screen time in all 3 movies and the holiday special, and I think they finally gave a little bit of credit. Drax.
Yes.
Good old
mean,
Drax.
Drax
Drax
has one
was-
of my favorite. I'll get to it. Keep
No,
going.
no, please. I would love to hear this.
So when you guys were talking about what's his Sean Gunn? I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
Kraglin.
Kraglin. And you were saying that it was corny, but like good corny. That's something I told my husband at the end of Guardians is that they went back. I think Marvel has leaned into corny way too much. MODOK, need I say more? And they leaned into corny and Guardians, but in such a good, pleasant way. The
Mhm.
last like scenes where Nebula says, Drax, you weren't supposed to be a destroyer, you're supposed to be a dad. I was like that's a corny line. It is, but I was crying because it's so touching.
So that's the thing. Like with Drax, they gave him what he wanted as well. Like I was going to ask you guys this, like what made you cry? Was it the dark stuff? Was it the animal abuse that we kind of talked about? Or was
I
it the
didn't
fact
cry.
that all of these, you're a
Oh.
robot. You are not, you are not an emotional being.
All
But
of
okay.
it.
Okay, so what made you emotional? Was it the attacks or the abuse of animals? Or was it the fact that these broken people who have been trying their hardest to make up for something in their lives finally got the things that they wanted, and none of it was saving the galaxy? It was all
Right.
individual things. Like that's what hit me. I play D&D, and my DM, when we were talking about creating a character, it was years ago, said to me, well-adjusted people do not become heroes. If you are a well-adjusted person, you're going to go be a farmer. And this is in the D&D world, right? Like you're going to go be a merchant. You are going to be a bartender. You are not going to go out there and fight necromancers. If you're a well-adjusted person, you don't have that drive. In this for D&D, he was like, every hero is broken somehow.
Right.
And finding that thing that has broken them helps you to know how they can then grow. And I
Unless your
feel
name is
that's
Bruce Wayne.
You're saying he's not broken?
No, no,
You
no. I
think
mean,
Bruce
he has a
Wayne is well adjusted?
No, 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 no,
Dead
no,
parents.
no, 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 no. Bruce, look at that thing that makes him better. I, I think that Bruce is stuck just in a cycle, in a loop, and I don't think he's ever going to get better.
Hmm.
And that's fair, but he's on a journey. He's trying to get better.
He's trying, but I think he
but
realizes that it's just for him.
it's
It's like a hamster wheel.
yes, and so that's the thing that I felt about this. I felt like James Gunn did a masterful job healing these broken people and setting up the next stage for the next stage of Guardians. Uh, were quite amazing if you watch those after credit scenes, and that's also why I think that this is this felt darker, is because Marvel movies touch on dark subjects all the time, but they
Mhm.
gloss over them, they make a joke about them, and that's about as far as they go. This
Well,
one, they made you look at it and made you think about it, and then when you really thought about how broken these people were, they delivered on some healing. Not completely healing, like some of them were just going off, but they delivered on some healing, which all of the sudden just felt emotional to me. And that's what made me like tear up in this movie, was like these people who've just wanted to have this thing in their life and have gone to extreme lengths to try to make up for it are finally getting that thing. Drax gets to be a dad. And that was just so emotional to me.
the juxtaposition between the silly, goofy Guardians group of people
Hmm.
and then these dark storylines makes it work so well. Like you're talking about Bruce Wayne, that story is going to be dark. It's not going to be you're not going to
Well, he
put
is the Dark Knight. Well,
Pat
yeah,
Benatar and I mean, I don't know, fun music, fun 80s music to a lot of Bruce Wayne stuff.
sure.
Unless you're talking about the Batusi.
Or
Yeah.
Hell is for Children.
Okay, fine. Pat Benatar might have been a bad example. Okay.
Or Shadows of the Night. Need I go on?
Your best shot. Uh, but
Fire
yeah,
away.
Musical episode.
you have this like bright, beautiful, weird ass world like the Oregon planet. I can't get over how weird it is, but how like cool it also was, because it was very anatomical and very cool. But then they have these dark, I mean, and even all these, like you're saying, they face their Mantis doesn't want to feel like she's unheard or stupid, but she goes off on her own to find herself in the end so that she can be that person for herself. Yeah, Drax gets to be a dad, not be looked at as the strong guy, but as someone who has emotional depth and intelligence to help these children. Nebula gets to be in charge and be like
Be a
help,
leader.
be a leader, and
And
like help,
have more of a purpose.
and a good purpose, not a purpose to hurt people, but to help people.
Yeah. Oh, for
And
sure.
agency. I think that's one
Yeah.
of the other biggest things for her, was agency, not just a tool for Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
And Rocket gets to accomplish what he never got to do, and be a leader as well of the Guardians and be the good guy and go to the new planet.
Yeah.
It is so heartbreaking to see how those experiments. So it's Teeth's, Floor, and
Lila.
yeah, it was so heartbreaking when they're talking about going to the next planet, going to be part of civilization, and you just know that's not going to happen.
Nope.
And so, as just an aside, for those of you who don't know the Guardians outside of the movies, Rocket was actually effectively a policeman, just to oversimplify, for a planet called Half-World of animal creations like him, or anthropomorphic animals like him. So him going, we're going to go and be on a planet, we're going to be the next generation, and that leads into our villain, the High Evolutionary, which is a definite
yes.
different take on the character to a small degree than his comic book origins. His on Earth, in the comics, he's from Earth originally, but he did create a race of anthropomorphic animal characters, and he lived on Marvel MCU tie-in Wundagore Mountain, which is where Wanda may have died in Multiverse of Madness. That was actually his stronghold in the comics. But we get the High Evolutionary, who's if there's an epitome of playing God, here's your guy.
Right.
And he's striving for the perfection that he didn't find in the world. And you look at the affection that he seemed to have for Rocket as he's realizing that Rocket is special. And then you look at how dark that his purpose for paying attention to Rocket is and what the underlying motive is. And you're just like, ick, to
A
put it very
whole lot of
simply.
ick.
A whole
Yeah.
lot of ick. And he's, if the Guardians have their quirks and idiosyncrasies and aren't well, this guy is off the charts
Oh, he can throw a tantrum. My goodness,
on a dime.
he is a fantastic actor. What is his name?
Chuck Woody, what's his last name?
What is
Iwuchi?
it?
Iwuji, yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Like, yeah, he did, like, every single time you saw him on screen, he was yelling about something. And it was just like, I think that not even just like his abilities and his intelligence to be able to create these life forms and planets and all these other things that he's done. But just to see how, like, it almost felt like a little unpredictable at times. Like, he just would fly off the handle at a moment's, like, not even a moment's notice. And you're just like, how wow. Like, it just would be, oh, did I freeze?
Nope,
No?
we're listening
Oh,
to you.
okay. Oh, well, it like
You got us
I
all
froze for a
enthralled.
second. I froze for a second. And I was like, oh no, it's happening again. I lost my train of thought. But basically, yeah, like I felt like every time he came on screen, like it was just like, oh boy, what's gonna happen next? What is he gonna go off about next? And so it was just, I guess to me, it was like he was really fascinating and also kind of scary. He was scary.
He read to me as a rich guy with a god complex.
Mhm.
And I really there was no loyalty from him to anybody else.
Oh no.
And
Everybody was
because-
just there to serve him. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were there to serve him, and he didn't care about them except when they could help further his goals. And so that's what you were talking about with he could flip out and have a tantrum at the drop of a hat because he didn't actually care about any of those people. So the second they stopped helping him get towards his goals, he didn't care about them and was willing to murder them and kill them and everything. But
Or destroy a planet.
Destroy a planet. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I've heard of raising your lab before, but I mean, he just took it to an entirely new level.
Oh, that's dark.
And it was I that one felt harder to me because they created basically Earth. It wasn't some weird alien planet. Yes, there were weird alien creatures on it.
Yeah, they're just animal creatures.
They're animal creatures, but it was all recognizable. We saw Earth in it. It was not a far jump to go to
suburban houses and cookie cutter houses and very.
And that was a take directly out of the comics as well. He created a planet called Counter Earth, where he was just like, we're just going to do our thing over here, and Earth can go float rocks for all intents and purposes. So that was a direct draw from the comics.
Well, and then to go on the spaceship and to see all the children that had been locked up, that again is going to hit your heartstrings to see the way he not only use it, but will use children. Like, it doesn't matter if it's animal and an anthropomorphic animal or whatever. It's all about his purpose, his goals. It reminded me of Mask of Zorro at the end of that. So with
Now,
the people locked up.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, okay.
oh, okay.
Never
Okay.
mind.
Yeah,
Sorry.
There's no spaceship in the Mask
At
of
the
Zorro.
mine. You're talking about the mine.
Never mind.
We got you, Steph.
We got there
We're
eventually.
there now. We got it.
I've seen a fan theory floating around with all of the potential issues that Jonathan Majors is having with his alleged allegations against him.
Mhm.
Is that it would be really cool to have the guy who played the High Evolutionary just casually reveal that that's just a variant king.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
and
That
have
might
him
be a good change.
and have him step into the role of king.
I mean, I guess if that's what they have to do, but
I mean, like, nobody wants any changes there. Like, outside of the people, the skills, the acting skills are all just on par. Like High
Oh,
Evolutionary was
yeah.
great,
No doubt
King's
about
great,
that.
but just the way things are, they might have
Yeah.
to be looking for backups, and I think he's a pretty good backup plan for this
Yeah,
King
I would
thing.
take that.
And he
mean,
has some of the same characteristics as Kang, so it all works out there.
Yeah.
it's an interesting theory. I like it.
I love how Rocket had the opportunity to kill him and said, "I'm not going to do that. I'm a guardian." Although you can see behind them all the dead people from the battles before.
Yeah.
In fact, you see there's a quote where Peter Quill tells Groot, "Kill them all," when they
Yep.
do the very cool fight scene on the
Mhm.
High Evolutionaries
Yes.
like observation deck.
So I was actually a little disappointed during the fight scene where they're all missing each other, where half the team is here, half the team is there, and they completely miss each other. And Rocket's fighting, and I missed um, something from the comics for him, just going, "Blam! I killed you! Blam! I killed you! Blam! I killed you!" Which I was like, I was waiting for that, looking at the way that they shot it, because it would have been the perfect opportunity for that, and I kind of expected it, and
Oh,
was
dang.
maybe a little disappointed that I didn't get that, but
Their fight scenes were cool. I think they were very creative with their fight choreography and did
Mhm.
some things that we hadn't really seen much before.
Well, and even back to that fleshy planet that we keep talking about, and like Nathan Fillion's
Oh
character,
my
as he
gosh.
was like the captain of that guard or whatever,
Mhm.
because that was fun to bring him back and to, I guess, to see his face too, because he was in Guardians Volume 1, but
And kind of in two.
is he kind of into?
He was on movie posters around town in two as Simon
Oh,
Williams.
oh,
Oh.
gotcha. But yeah, so just to like actually have like him there, like more as a human, yeah. So like even yeah, that was definitely a fun cameo, I guess you could say.
And
Well, I
they
mean,
did
he's James
another
Gunn's friend, and James Gunn always connects his
Yeah,
friends.
yes,
and that's
definitely.
another tease where they Drax could have died there. They
Mhm.
could have killed off Drax and they didn't, obviously.
And I
I
think that
thought he
they were
was going
playing with
to.
this.
I kind of
I
did
thought he was
too.
dead.
I think they were playing. I think that was one of the things that Gunn planned and executed well. Was there were many scenes throughout the movie where any of the characters could have died, and you're like, okay, not necessarily happy with the choice that somebody's going to die, but it's like it would have been appropriate at that point
Hmm.
and move the story. That we're like, okay, well, they've talked about moving on, and this is it.
I feel like this was the most James Gunn Marvel movie that he has ever done. That if you think back to who James Gunn is as a director, he's a provocateur. He likes to put people on edge and make them uncomfortable. And I feel, and I don't know if it's because Marvel had their controversy and scandal with him and fired him and then rehired him and all of that controversy. But I feel like James Gunn got to be more James Gunn. And I don't know if it had to do with the scandal or just the fact that Marvel seems to be letting their directors actually put in a little bit more of their flair into each of the movies, like the Sam Raimi
Yeah,
flair
Multiverse of
in
Madness.
Multiverse of Madness and some James Gunn in here. Like, and 100%, I think James Gunn is the reason why the movie was dark, because he didn't let you look away and brush off something with a corny joke. He made you look at it until you were uncomfortable with it, and
Mhm.
then he resolved it.
Right.
And that's why it feels darker.
Well, and even just back to the whole like the story with Rocket. Obviously, they were able to save him and take care of him, and when they were on the high evolutionary ship and trying to take care of business there, I thought it was kind of interesting how he was like only save the high intelligent life forms or something like that. He was like, everybody only get these people and get
Go get
off
the
the
sapient
ship.
life.
Yeah, yeah. Like he said, yeah, he's like, no, like just everybody just keep going. Like we got to get off this ship and get out of here. But then he kind of has his own plan where he's going after to the animals. But it seemed like at first, because he goes directly to the cage that has all those little baby raccoons, which that's where I lost it. That's where I got emotional, was in that scene there, when he's able to just like hold them all, and like he's like, "You're free, come with me," and they're like all like on top of him. And then like the whole time I'm like, well, this is nice, this is really good. And then you're like, but there's a lot more animals here. And like at first
Yeah.
you kind of wonder, was Rocket only going to come back for the raccoons, or was he like, because he kind of he pauses, and maybe that's just for his own sake, just to kind of make that connection with these animals that are the same species as him technically. And then all of a sudden, then you realize how big this menagerie of animals is in this ship, when he basically gets help from everybody else to free them, and they're all running and they're trying to get off the ship. Like, I think that was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, to see all of them also get freed. So not even just like the people, but like because they hit so hard throughout the show when showing Rocket's backstory, him being an animal, and just like bringing on that whole element, like it was nice to see that justice and that freedom that they got too.
Well, one of the other things we get with Rocket from that was the entire trilogy. Rocket has always been, there ain't nothing in the universe like me but me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then he stops at the cage and sees, he sees he sees the baby raccoons, and then sees the label inside the cage that tells him what they are, and raccoon, which brings every
Mhm.
time Peter has called him a raccoon.
He's like, I'm not a raccoon.
Yeah, it brings that full circle, and
That's
he
true.
finds out, not only finds out what he is, but he's not alone. He's not the only
Yeah.
one,
Yep.
because
Oh
he's
yeah.
always been so. I mean, his backstory is horrific, but he's always been so guarded about being the only one of his kind.
Mhm.
So you get that kind of, I'm not. I get to belong to something larger than just me, and even the Guardians.
Well, even him being solitary because he lost all his friends and being the last one of the experiments of the 4 of them,
Mhm.
he put up his guards.
Hmm.
And so to see him go straight for like the raccoons makes perfect sense, but then to see him see the bigger picture, see his friends, what could have happened to, and then let everyone escape. Yeah, it's very touching.
Mhm.
And I did bawl through
Definitely.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just say how amazing I thought it was when they were picking names and Rocket chose Rocket. It was just so innocent and childlike
It's very
compared
cute.
to the I'm Rocket and I'm this guy who will take that person's arm and that person's leg and blam, I killed
Right.
you. And so just to have it be, ooh, that's a rocket, I'm going to fly. And just that was I just thought that was great. Like
Well, I think that,
Mhm.
Rocket's depth in this movie definitely became way more than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
everybody kind of found depth that we didn't, even through the other uh, two Guardians, Endgame, Ragnarok, and I need to come back to Ragnarok for just a minute. Um, that they gained depth, another level of depth that we hadn't gotten before. I mean, we've gotten growth in the characters definitely across them, with the possible exception of Drax until this movie, and we finally get just that extra little, like, frosting on the cake, just to kind of wrap it all up, and send them on their merry way for the future. Um, and going back to what Brandon was saying a few minutes ago about Marvel letting directors put their stamp on movies now, they've done it in the past. I would say that no matter how you look at it, Thor, for example, was definitely a Kenneth Branagh Shakespearean movie. So it's not like they haven't done that before. However, there have been times I think they've let the director go a little overboard, and that's where I look at the Guardians in, Love and Thunder, not Ragnarok, um, because we've seen the Guardians under somebody else's pen now, Taika Waititi, and it didn't feel right. So I think that James Gunn, over the course of, I can't remember when the first Guardians movie came out, so let's call it 7, 8 years with these characters and molding them with his vision of who these Guardians were. was one thing, and looking at them for the first 10 minutes of Love and Thunder is like, those are the Guardians, but they're not my Guardians, I guess would be the best way to put it.
It definitely felt off. Like, yeah, no, I remember seeing when we were seeing Love and Thunder in the theater, it was like, what is going on here?
Yeah,
Like, you can tell like they tried.
but they were the comic
Um,
An
relief.
attempt was made.
yeah, an attempt was made, and like there was the connection, and like it was really just a purpose to show how Thor was not with them anymore and was going to go off and do his own thing. Like that was
Yeah.
all obviously the purpose of it, but it did feel very like I don't know. It felt like it was a little unnecessary. Like,
And I think that's
yeah.
because Hollywood learns the wrong lessons from movies. If you remember back, it was August 1st, 2014, by the way, when the first Guardians of the Galaxy came out.
Thank you.
Google's my friend. Um,
You just
but-
knew it off the top of your head, right?
Yeah,
was
yeah. I
gonna
mean,
say
that's why I'm here.
2014.
But if you go back to that, go back a few months, and I was sitting in a movie theater for another movie with my dad, who is a nerd. He won't admit that he's a nerd, but he goes and sees all these comic book movies, took me all the X-Men movies and stuff like that when I was a kid. But he turned to me and he's like, they're making a movie about a raccoon and a talking tree. And he was just like, so like, I don't know about this. And then it just exploded at the box office and did so well, and everybody loved it. And there was the joke, the sketches on Saturday Night Live about how Marvel could do no wrong, announcing chairs and having and having Chris Pratt walk out with a bunch of office chairs rolling behind him, and having be like, it's a success. Well, after Guardians of the Galaxy came out, I feel like Marvel fell into the same beats and tropes for all of their movies.
The
the
humor.
the humor, yes, like yes, that was great for Guardians of the Galaxy, but then all of a sudden everything had to be humorous.
Mhm.
You go from Thor to Love and Thunder or Ragnarok, and it's just like, okay, it's Guardians of the Galaxy but with Thor. Okay, all of these different movies that could have been done so well. Like, my favorite thing about phase 1 of the MCU is you had different kinds of movies. You
Mhm.
had Winter Soldier was a spy thriller with superheroes. You had all of these different types of movie. Captain America was a World War II movie with superheroes. And we lost that after Guardians of the Galaxy. And I was actually a little bit resentful to Guardians of the Galaxy for a while about that. But at this point, after 3, I feel like James Gunn was like, no, I was doing that for a reason, and this is the ultimate payoff that we get.
Mhm.
But Hollywood says, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 made a ton of money. Let's just copy what they did.
Right.
And without understanding why they did it.
Marvel got high on their own stuff, in my opinion. And I I have not been non-vocal about my opinions about phase 4. The beginnings of phase 5, which that's what are we in phase 5 now? Is that what this is?
Yes.
Have been meh. Uh, they've been meh. Like, come on, they have not been great. And I think this has changed that tide for me, in my opinion. I went in expecting very little. Already a strike against them for having Chris Pratt still in this series. But then, I'm sorry, that was my Chris Pratt for the night. I won't say anything else bad about him. So I went in expecting meh. I didn't. The second one was fine, and I came out really, really enjoying this film.
Would
Yeah.
you say you were satisfied?
I've
No,
never
no, no,
been
but
satisfied.
well, no, because I mean,
There's a
there's
Hamilton.
looking at
More music.
looking at the arc that the Guardians have taken, going take them out of Endgame and out of Love and Thunder, but just the arc that they've taken in their series. Did you feel this was a satisfying end to at least this iteration of the Guardians for you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And in fact, I was very excited by the end The end credit scenes with Rocket being the leader of the Guardians was great. The end credit scene with Peter Quill saying that he will be back, I was like, is that the person? Out of all the story, he was definitely not the main character in this movie. Is that the story that I would choose to have continued on? No.
I have a theory about that.
Let's talk about it.
So they said specifically the legendary Star-Lord would continue. Okay, well, let's look at where the legendary Star-Lord is on Earth. What's the next movie that we're getting? Well, I think it's the next one, Marvels, or the next movie that goes to space. We have Nick Fury coming back in Secret Invasion and looking at, the Skrull takeover of political power and Earth over whatever period of time. And then we go into the Marvels after that series wraps. Fury is not an unintelligent person, so he's going to know, he's got his eyes on everything and everyone. So I get the feeling he's going to notice when a spaceship shows up. Thank you. Have eye patch will travel. Okay. He has his eye on everyone and everything. So I think he's going to notice when a spaceship shows up and drops off this guy in Minnesota. And Missouri. In Missouri. And I get the feeling that he may be at least cameoed in the Marvels on the it's not called the Peak, Saber Station. So that's my theory. We will see or Sword Station. We will see if it comes to pass or not, but I think that may be where we see him again as an attaché to Fury.
Yeah, I know. I didn't. Yeah, when I saw that at the very end of the end credits as well, I was a little like, wait, really? I thought this was supposed to be like the conclusion of this version of Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's like, are we not done with Star-Lord? But then I can see it definitely more as he's going to pop in here and there, or just here, just, maybe only one thing. And then, he's not going to get his own movie. I don't think that's going to happen.
He may be a through line character in the way that Fury was in Phase 1. He might be a lesser through line character in other movies to kind of push certain things forward. But they could also be they could be leaning more into his comic book origins, where he worked for NASA and he was a astronaut. No, he was an astronaut for NASA, and I think he also worked in security there with Carol Danvers. So they may be leaning a little bit to that and putting him in with Sword to kind of walk that line, or have him just there as the Coulson, effectively.
Right.
Just kind of tie things along.
That's who I was thinking of too when you said that.
Do we have any ideas or know who they were alluding to as the man mowing the lawn? I guess his grandfather's son. Isn't that who they were? His uncle?
That there was somebody else. Yeah, there was definitely.
Well, yeah, because isn't he like I get he's your son and everything, but I don't know why this grown man won't mow your lawn. Or I guess he wasn't mowing the lawn, and that was the problem. So it felt like there was something like
why
he's
mention
going to be a big, it's going to be a twist to see who that person is. Hey, there you go.
Well, yeah, like that whole end credit scene with Star-Lord talking to his grandpa. Like, I don't really even know what the whole purpose of that was. And maybe we don't know yet. And like, that's the thing, is like, maybe it was all just to mention this other person or something. But I don't know. I felt like it was, I'm like, me and my husband, after we watched this movie, we're like, did we really just wait after all the credits for that? I don't know. It felt very lackluster to us.
I feel part of that was to deliver on this is who Star-Lord really wants to be. This mundane life is what this bigger than life character actually wants.
Yeah.
And so I mean, because there's so many people who are living the quote unquote mundane life that dream of bigger things, who are like, you know what? The grass is always greener. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent. I know we don't do that on this show, but if you'll
not
forgive me.
Always on topic. Come on.
So this past month, literally the day after I got back from Disneyland, the city that I live in left a notice on my door saying, hey, you have a water leak somewhere. Go find it and let us know, and we'll get it fixed.
Oh
And
gosh.
I said, okay. So we shut off all the water in my house, and the meter was still spinning. And there was and a, a just mess after mess after mess, multiple plumbers, people who didn't know what they were doing, people who ruined stuff in my house, till finally it's been resolved on Friday. And then
Wow.
Oh
this
wow.
morning the water heater started leaking, but that's a whole different plumbing issue.
Oh
No.
But
no.
it's so stressful. It's like my life. I just want to get in a spaceship and fly away, right? However, I remember it was about a week ago. I was in a gas station getting a soda, and on the gas station music came on the music that I listened to in high school, because I'm old now, and that music is now on in gas stations and stuff like that. And there was a song that came on that was talking about how this guy's life was a mess. It was difficult. There was lots of stuff going on. Things were breaking left and right, but he had a beautiful wife and a loving family, and he couldn't ask for more, right? And so in the musical episode, I actually did not reference any of the actual lyrics to that song, just to give us all a break. But I remembered, I listened to that, and I remembered thinking back in high school, you know what? That's what I want. I want a life that it's going to be messy, but ultimately, when it gets down to it, I've got people that I love around me, and and my family is safe, and we're secure, and we have the things we need. Life just kind of sucks sometimes. The things in life suck sometimes, not life itself. And all of a sudden, my attitude towards this disaster that I had in my front yard, like literally a 10-foot hole in my front yard. I was joking, I was putting a swimming pool in my front yard.
That sounds
Looking
like a
for,
dad joke.
I mean, you had to joke or cry. But all
Yeah.
of a sudden, that hole did not feel quite as big the next time I saw it, because I was like, no, this is what I wanted. And, you know, a couple days later, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and this end credit scene felt very much like that. It's like, you know what? This
Mm.
is a mundane life. We're arguing about who's mowing the lawn or who's not mowing the lawn.
Okay.
But you know
Mm.
what? I'm with my family, and life's good. And so
Mm.
part of me wonders if it wasn't trying to get to that a little bit. Although knowing Marvel, they've got some, his brother was, his sister's already Mantis, right? So his brother's somebody else completely.
I
And they'll
like your
make some reveal.
explanation better, though.
I do too. I think that's a lot better take.
I hope that's what it was, but it requires a very specific set of circumstances in your life to recognize that. So it may not be the best choice for a multi-million-dollar box office movie.
So maybe you were at the right place at the right time, and all this had to happen to you to see the bigger
They
picture
wrote
of
this for
Guardians,
me specifically.
specifically for you.
Oh,
Good job,
did you
James
not see it
Gunn.
in like the credits at the very, very end after Legendary Star-Lord return? This was for Brandon.
It's true. It's true.
Please, if you're ever giving a talk at like a church or something, working Guardians of the Galaxy into it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I work in nerd references into every public speaking talk that I ever give.
Yes, yes.
Church, work, whatever it is.
I love it. I love it.
Speaking of music and that song coming on for you, d- having them end it with Dog Days Are Over was so brilliant and so
Mhm.
lovely and so joyful. I love Florence and the Machine regardless, but I thought that song, and like music has been such a big deal for all of the Guardians movies.
Yeah,
I think this
definitely.
soundtrack was amazing, but especially the Dog Days Are Over at the end just like hit the spot for me. It just felt light. It felt like right now we can be joyful and then we have to get to work and get this stuff done. But right now let's like choose joy. And so it's just I don't know. I loved that ending scene.
It
It
was a
was
nice
great.
bookend to how Guardians 1 opened, with Peter on a job, but just dancing his way to the site with singing Redbone all the way through. Oh, sorry, Hooked on a Feeling. Sorry, so that would be Blue Swede in the beginning. But it was light, happy, fun song, and we get it bookended with a fun song at the end of this trilogy. I think it was a nice touch.
Yeah, one of the interviews that I saw where they were promoting this movie, Chris Pratt said that, James Gunn had his hand in every musical selection for this. And so it wasn't just oh yeah, this song will be good here. It's a popular song. It was this is the emotion that I want to drive home right now. Like it was planned beginning to end. And even if it wasn't planned, it was tied together very well.
Yeah.
Well, and even just with the eras too. So like he had the tapes, the cassette tape, volume 1 and volume 2, and then eventually he got a Zune. And so even then, like the music that was picked for each of those soundtracks that they had, that because it was Star-Lord. Like to me, like the thing I would always like think of is like it's like Star-Lord is the DJ in this. Like we're hearing his soundtrack, that he had on his tape and then a Zune, obviously, because I mean they showed that and throughout the trilogy, but like it was just fun to hear the different eras.
Kids, before iPhones played all your music, you had to have a whole separate contraption to hold
A
your
device.
music. Yes, it used to be called an iPod. Those are no longer things.
I
And then
still
there was
have mine.
a cheaper version called a Zune.
Actually,
for
it
the
wasn't
parents.
that cheaper.
Wasn't it?
No, I worked in a computer store at the time and was buddy with a Microsoft rep, and they were trying to get us to sell Zunes so bad. They just didn't sell.
Oh, I always had off-brand iPods, music holder. I don't know. So yes, Zunes were great.
MP3 players.
MP3 player. Yeah. I know. I feel very much like I'm getting to the old stage now too, where it's like, that was my childhood.
I know. My best friend had a Zune growing up, and I always thought she was like weird because it's like, but I thought everybody else had like these other devices, whether it was just a plain MP3 player or an iPod, like the brand name versus not. And all of a sudden there's this new one called Zune, and I'm like, why did you get that one? Like I just remember that. And it was brown.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were the ugliest colors, and like here's an iPod that has like all these like fun colors and da-da-da.
Shiny and all that stuff.
Yeah, I had one of those like nanos, the ones that were square, and it was red. It was actually the color of this red on my hoodie. It was like a berry, and it was like limited edition. I thought I was so cool, you guys.
You are.
I am. Thank you.
That's where it all started. I should have gotten myself a red iPod Nano.
They were limited edition. Like, yeah. Good luck finding one. No.
They're probably in museums now, Marley.
Ugh. Can they pay me to put mine in a museum? I'd let them take it. There's still music on it even. They can scroll through my playlists and music videos because it had the screen that you could do videos.
Yeah, there used not to be those
watch
types
your
of
music
screens on
videos.
phones.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm on eBay right now. I can buy a red iPod Nano 3rd generation with 8 gigabytes for $25.
Wait, is it the red one or is it like the special
Marley?
Berry.
Okay,
we'll talk about this
later.
later. It does matter because there's different reds.
Oh, but it's not the square one that people were turning into Apple Watches before Apple Watches were things. Those can go up to $140.
Okay, I'm gonna look this up, but let's keep going. Let's keep going here. But yes,
no tangents
music.
on this show.
Yes, music is a huge part of this trilogy, and like it was just, I loved how they kept it real for each of the each of the movies. And so it was fun to hear kind of not different, but like to me, it was a different soundtrack in volume 3. Honestly,
we had more than one DJ because you started out with Rocket and then Nebula played some stuff.
And there was a lot of songs I didn't recognize, but at the same time, like I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. So good feelings.
I actually did not like the first Guardian of the Galaxy because of the soundtrack. Well, no, it's a lie.
Really?
I've liked it, but
That's a hot take.
I've always felt resentful towards the first Guardians of the Galaxy because of its soundtrack. Because
it's so good?
Yes. That's exactly what it is. Because I'm like, do I actually like this movie? Or does the soundtrack really just hit on all of the right buttons for me to to have good emotions during it. And so I,
Oh.
for the longest time, could not. Well, still, I don't know if I like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 or if the music just gets me. And I've ultimately decided it doesn't matter
So
because
you're against people manipulating your emotions with music. Good to know.
I know it makes media really hard to watch. But there was just so much of it in the first one. And the
Yeah.
second one was okay, but by this third one, I just really think this third movie tied everything together, from the music to the emotions to the humor. Like, it just wrapped up the trilogy so much better. And I've talked about this a lot on other podcasts, but I really think in a trilogy, your third movie can either make or break it.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
Definitely.
like I did not like Infinity War until Endgame came out.
I
Because
don't think you were supposed to.
yeah, right.
No.
And people did not like Empire Strikes Back until Return of the Jedi came out. People didn't like the second Lord of the Rings movie until the third one came out. Like, it's a pattern that happens. Like, if you go read reviews for those movies, for those second movies that leave you on the not so great list, that third movie will either make or break that.
Well, and
And this
same
one
with
definitely made it.
book trilogies have that problem too, where I feel like you hit the first one so hard that it convinces you to finish the series, but a lot of times this third one it ties it
Fails
up.
you.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it fails you. I mean, Allegiant, or the Divergent series with Allegiant, the Hunger Games hits that real hard. So
Well, and even back to the Marvel movies, like with the Thor trilogy, quadrilogy,
Quadrilogy.
because like I feel like they did that though, because like the first one, I feel like it was a pretty solid movie on its own. It did enough to like keep people interest or get people interested in this character of Thor. And then when the second one came out, that was a little more disappointing. But then the third one was so good and so strong. Like, it's still like one of my on like in my top list of like favorite Marvel movies. And so here we were like, okay, Thor is good again. We're happy again. And then they come out with Love and Thunder, and you're like, I had high hopes and they were crushed. What? And so it just kind of like, I don't know if it ruined it. I don't know if that's quite the
Here, let me help
right
you with that. It's
term.
Thor: The Force Awakens.
Oh my gosh.
The secret to a good Marvel movie is to have low expectations, is what I'm hearing.
Unfortunately, no, that's not it. I think that the secret
No.
is a good story, is letting the development of the characters carry the story properly, and not pandering to total fan service,
Mm-hmm.
which unfortunately I think that I don't know where Love and Thunder went completely off the rails,
The
but
director. I don't like Taika Waititi.
okay.
I
Okay.
can see
Here's
myself
another
out
hot
now
take
if you
for
want
you.
me to, but
I love Taika, but no, there was so much
I think
Taika-ness in Love
he,
and Thunder that
yeah.
it's like to your what you were saying before. James Gunn did James Gunn really well in this movie. Taika Waititi did not do Taika Waititi really well
Nor did you
in
do
Love
James
and
Gunn
Thunder.
well.
Yeah.
Well, fine,
No,
yes.
definitely. Yeah. Like, because Ragnarok, he did do good.
Mhm.
And then and again, like our hopes were really high, and it just he didn't do it the same. He tried to bring in other stuff that was going on, and it just didn't work.
It was just muddled.
Yeah.
What do you think has been the best film since this? I'm going to say this has been my favorite film in the last long time. What's
mean,
been
In the
your
Marvel
favorite
universe,
film in
I
the
mean,
Marvel
I
universe?
feel
Yes,
like
no.
this could be an
We'll
entirely
contain it
different.
to a Marvel.
I feel like this could be a very different or a whole episode on Age of Geek just on its own.
are we including Phase 4 or
Yeah, include it all. I mean, you can include maybe don't include the TV shows, but it's been so many of them have been misses lately.
Well, lately, yeah, it's been a little bit harder, and especially with like I feel like we had 3 in a row that were just really, really difficult to to continue to like and to watch and keep up with everything that's going on in Marvel. We had Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, and Quantumania that were like, to me, like, because I know I've said this before on this podcast, like, it would take a lot for me to hate a Marvel movie. It would take so much. Like, I'm a little more like, well, there's still some good things about it, but it's not on the top of my list. And then all this, and then all of a sudden we get this one, volume 3 of Guardians, and I'm like, wow, this was like a breath of fresh air. This is like what we needed to give some, I guess, hope that like Marvel is okay. Marvel is still doing fine. If you are feeling burnt out, that's fine. You can feel burnt out. You don't have to keep watching these if you don't want to, but like, let's just enjoy them for like what they are too, and what is being built up. Because I know Robert and I, like, we've had conversations on this podcast, and especially Robert, talking about Phase 4 and the purpose of Phase 4. And we're still kind of getting out of that, I think. We're still in that, like, trying to pick up and find the right speed with Marvel again.
I would argue this movie could fit Phase 4 as as a tail end or transition out of 4,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily be like 4 plus or 4B. Just because of the traumatic experiences going into it, but there was no loss in this movie, which was the overarching theme for Phase 4. Let me take that back because that's not true. Our characters outside of Rocket didn't experience the same level of loss that we saw throughout the rest of Phase 4. But this one I think was a good stepping stone to something more positive, less bleak, I guess would be a way to put it, than Phase 4 was. Steph, to answer your question, I think that for me, one of the things out of the last, let's call it 2 years of Marvel movies, I might have to go 2.5, Shang-Chi. I enjoyed that
Oh,
for what
that's
it
a good
was.
one.
And it was a really good self-contained story that just happened to be in the Avengers universe. I will share a similar point, maybe not as vehemently as Val from the movies that make us do, that you built up Shang-Chi as, the next character, and we have not heard anything about him since then, even though we've seen Kamertage, where we know that Wong took him and Katie at the end of Shang-Chi. We've heard nobody even reference him at all. So I think that they're wasting a little bit of that potential for his introduction. But I think that for me, Shang-Chi was probably one of the strongest movies that Marvel has done outside of this one in the past 2 to 3 years.
I 100% agree with that. And if you ever want to do a Shang-Chi follow-up podcast on this, it was great. It was great because
I'll join.
it was one of those things. It was one of those movies that it was a martial arts movie set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mhm.
Martial arts movie with superheroes.
Yes.
And like I've already talked about how I love that. I don't know. Did you guys see the interview with James Gunn where he was talking about how superhero fatigue is real, but it's not because of superheroes?
Yeah.
He basically said that people are getting fatigued from superhero movies not because of superheroes, but because these movies are coming out with no story, no character development. They're just vehicles to let people punch things.
Yeah.
And that's what people are getting tired of. And that's what we've spent the whole night. We haven't really talked much about the action scenes here about Guardians. We've talked about the emotional character journeys that have happened and a couple of the special effects like Nowhere Flying, but nothing really about like the fight scenes. Like we're not that hasn't been the key point of this movie. Pre-show we were talking about The Walking Dead, and the zombies aren't the villains in there. They happen to be in the world, but you have that, and that's what drove, in my opinion, The Walking Dead so well, is because it wasn't a story about zombies where they wanted to show you the scariest zombies every week. It was a story about people
But
that happened to have zombies in it
too.
Yes.
yeah. But I think that's what we could have in the Marvel movie, a story about people, just happens to have superheroes in it.
The movies lacked heart, and I think that we got that with Shang-Chi. I think that we definitely got that in spades with this. I think that to be fair, I think that Taika Waititi tried to some degree to give it to us in Love and Thunder and missed the mark, because not only did you get Thor's story with Jane, but you also had Gore's story with his daughter, and trying to say that. So he tried, but he just missed the mark with it.
How much do you think that's the studio forcing them to interconnect movies? Because there's this movie which is not connected to the rest of the MCU except for Guardians 1, 2, and 3, right? Like it references
Endgame.
events of Endgame.
And
as
the
well.
holiday special.
It's
Guardians.
it's Guardians.
I know.
And so like it doesn't reach out to the rest of the world to be its thing. Shang-Chi is just in the Avengers world in the MCU. Before Shang-Chi, probably my favorite was Doctor Strange, the first one. And that was the same thing. It was a standalone movie. And so if they are forcing them to make these connections, then all of a sudden you get weird Guardians of the Galaxy writers, and you get things that cause these issues. That, like, Ant-Man was not an Ant-Man movie. It was a setup for Phase 5. Like, it did not match the tone or the action of any of the Ant-Man movies. And I felt like, okay, they made them do this because they needed to connect it to the wider universe, and they needed to make their wider universe story progress.
They needed to introduce King.
Yeah, it was a King vehicle.
Bring him more
Yeah.
into it, because he's only just in a very small part at the very end of Loki.
Ant-Man is probably Ant-Man. What is
Quantumania?
Yes, sorry, but it is corny for the sake of being corny, and I hated that so much because I love Paul Rudd, and I think he plays Paul Rudd, but he played Paul Rudd and did so much corny, and they did it so much better in this film. So yeah, I do hope that it's starting to change and take an upward turn.
It might be on the DC side now that James Gunn is over there, but
dear Lord, I hope so. I'm here for it.
That's a topic for another.
Use Flash as a vehicle to get rid of Ezra Miller.
We'll talk about that
Is
in a future
Shang-Chi
episode, I'm sure.
supposed to be in any other of the Marvel films, or is
we don't
he's
know?
done. He's done so far. Like I would be shocked if Marvel hired him to direct a movie, as he's Kevin Feige for the DC universe now. It'd be like DC hiring Kevin Feige to direct a Batman movie.
Okay.
Although Kevin Feige's going to go to a Batman movie and go, "Here's my notebook, and we could have made this movie better," like he did with Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, I think James Gunn is done with with Marvel.
Well, his contract. I think that his contract, if I remember reading it correctly, is like at least I think it's a 5 to 10 year contract, and I see him being a DC exclusive, and I am insanely curious to see how he treats the properties. I know he's going to treat them as a fan and with a level of reverence that they have not had for far too long. But I think that for me, the fact that he's come out saying we're doing, a new Superman, a younger Superman who's not, necessarily at the top of his game, but he's early in the game. I'm curious to see that, but I have a very high mental bar for that to clear, to see what he can do. I think the Gunn is capable of doing it. I'm hoping he does it correctly and doesn't put too much of his fan affinity into it and pulls back and goes, or at least has somebody who can go, maybe we should dial this back a bit. Because I think that having as much writing, directing, and producing credit on this without somebody to have that kind of, hey, James, back it up a bit, is where we get into trouble.
It's like George Lucas on episode 1.
Yes, exactly that.
Do you know who they could get to play young Superman? Will Poulter.
Well, he's already used him in a movie, so it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He's a James Gunn friend now, right?
Yeah. Once a friend of James Gunn. I mean, that might not be true.
I mean, did you see Peacemaker and did you see Guardians of the Galaxy 3? I'm just saying.
I noticed.
Yeah.
And I
No.
don't know, to be fair, I don't think it was a bad call though. I think that getting Chukwudi Iwoji to play the High Evolutionary, as we said earlier, his range and how quickly he could turn that range and make the almost manic swings back and forth so quickly, I think it was a great choice for the character. I I would, love to see him in pretty much anything at this point. Hell, make him Lex Luthor. James Gunn, make him Lex Luthor.
I
Ooh.
could see that. I mean, anyone has to be better than Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg. Oh, come on.
Seriously. We have been talking for over an hour and a half, and we need to end, but we cannot end before we talk about the last scene with
Cosmo?
Groot. Oh,
Oh.
I guess Cosmo as well.
Oh, Cosmo.
Did
But
Groot
the-
have a story in this?
No.
No.
But I don't even care. I didn't make
Sort
the
of.
connection to what that last scene with Groot actually saying words was alluding to until afterwards.
Same. Like when I watched it, I
I
was
was
like, I was
oh,
upset
is he like
because
growing up now or?
well, I was upset because I'm like, no, this is wrong. Why are we like, no, he's supposed to just say I am Groot and then we know what he means. But yeah, I think you're going to the same thing that I was going to say. So go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, that now that we've gone on this journey with them and we've become part of their story and their family, we can now understand what Groot is saying. The way Gamora at the end started picking up what Groot was saying because
And
she
yeah.
was
And
that is
how the
us.
rest, yeah,
We
and
are
how the
all
rest of the
connected.
and how the rest of the Guardians seem to know how he is communicating to them. So yeah, that was kind of like their way of saying, hey, yeah, you the audience, you also understand Groot. So him saying I love you guys, that was him saying I am Groot.
Well, they foreshadowed what your reaction should have been with Gamora when she realized, wait, I just understood what this tree said.
Yeah.
And she was like, wait, like she was taken aback. Tell him I'll be right there. Like this is weird. And so then a few minutes later, we get the translation. It's like, oh, this is weird. Like now I didn't see the movie like on opening day or prior to that. I was dealing with a giant hole in my front yard for quite a bit of the month. And so I didn't get to it until like a week later. So I went into it having seen a headline saying, understanding Groot just means that or hearing those words mean that you understand Groot, not that he actually said those words.
Yeah.
I managed to avoid, I think, every spoiler because I didn't see the movie until Friday night.
Oh, wow.
So I think that I might have heard something about Groot says something that's different, but I didn't know what. So I got to get that fresh.
Yeah.
But the take on, we are now part of the family, which means now we're going to be driving fast cars in space.
Vin Diesel, baby.
But I like that take.
Yeah, I know. I honestly wish I had gotten that spoiler before seeing it because then it would have made more sense to me. Or
yeah, because I was like, what is going on?
yeah, I was like, we're not supposed to be. No, this is not right. Like I would.
Oh my God, we are Thor.
Me and my husband were both just so like, no, like he can't all of a sudden talk. Like we were both upset about it.
I saw a meme of Michelle Rodriguez saying there's just too many damn Marvel movies. And then knowing that we just came out with Fast X, it's like, come on, ma'am. Come on. We cannot say that.
Is she just mad because she hasn't been in one yet?
Maybe that's it.
How many Resident Evil movies was she in?
Yeah. I don't know.
The thing that made me the most upset about the "I love you guys" line was it just sounded like Vin Diesel. Groot has not sounded like Vin Diesel to me. Like if I sat there and thought about it, okay, I am Groot. Yeah, I guess that is kind of Vin Diesel. But the "I love you guys," it was like, oh, just make it not sound like Vin Diesel because he's just Fast and the Furious. We're family.
What were you going to say about Cosmo?
I like the fact that we got Cosmo. We got to see Cosmo do Cosmo's thing. Telepathic Russian cosmonaut. And that for me was great. The gender flip for Cosmo was I knew about that. But I love the fact that her interactions with Kraglin were all about, I am not a bad dog, take that back, and her
Yeah.
feelings being hurt. And it's like, you can think of whenever you've had to, chastise a pet and they have that, oh, watching the way that they made the dog just kind of, or gave her the voice of just like, no, take that back, that hurts, you don't mean that, no. And just the running that through the entire movie, and Kraglin just being like, nope, not taking it back.
Not gonna
Just
do it.
That was
I
fun.
enjoyed that. Just that little interplay with them, and just getting to see her, when at the beginning where Kraglin's trying to use the arrow and failing, she's like, oh, I could do that. And
It's
Kraglin's
like
like,
picking it up and carrying it with your fingers.
so just the fact that we got to see Cosmo be Cosmo and not just, the collector's showpiece was
Yeah.
fun.
Cosmo
Well,
was fun.
So Cosmo is based off of an actual dog that the
Yes.
Russians sent to space named Laika, and that dog was a female.
Oh,
So
really?
yes. Yes.
Are they male in the comics?
In the comics, they have been portrayed as male, yes.
Okay.
Well, in the video game, they had Cosmo was actually a big part of the video game too. Like Cosmo was like basically in charge of nowhere
And
too.
and that is also comic canon as well.
Yeah,
has
and
been
there were
comic
puppies.
canon.
There were little Cosmo puppies running around, and they had their own little space suits on, and it was adorable. But yeah, I'm trying to remember, because now that you're talking about like the gender flip thing, I'm like, wait a second, I think they portrayed Cosmo as a girl in the game, but maybe I need to look it up again and see, because now I'm
I
doubting
knew
myself.
some people were upset with the gender bend, but I just then assumed that it was a male dog they flew into space. So I did not know.
Yeah, like I said, historically in the comics, they've always played it off as being male, but
It's
that,
funny how people focus on the gender bend instead of it's like a talking dog.
yeah, talking dog, a telepathic dog at that,
Yeah.
with telekinesis.
But
we're fine
man,
with
he's
that.
he's male in the comics. Come on.
Yeah. We should probably wrap up around there. Although I do have one
it's
thing
a
that I'm looking
he
forward
in
to.
the video games.
It is he?
Anyways, he in the video game, yeah.
Okay.
But he still has puppies, so.
We will have to talk about future state of MCU, because I need to talk about the some of the coming press for Captain America 4, whatever they're calling it, which is no longer New World Order, because Sam gets a new suit, which looks much like one of Steve's old suits modified, and we get a new Falcon.
A new
Which is
they already introduced the new Falcon.
They already introduced him in Winter Soldier. And I'm sorry, in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's going to be Joaquin Torres, which is coming again from the comics. But yeah, there was a few things that we will have to talk about in the future MCU related comic podcast.
I'm down. I'm there.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to our long-winded. It wasn't even like a review. It was like us just chatting.
Oh, wait a minute. We need a review. It's a good movie. You should go see it. Please be warned, it is not for small children and very sensitive people.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
As a reminder,
now it's the review podcast.
As a reminder, Age of Geek is mostly against kill switches.
Mostly.
Yeah.
They're awful.
We want to thank Branden for being on our show tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, it was fun to talk with you.
Indeed.
And if you and also if you want a little bit more take on this movie, Movies That Make Us podcast, also they're part of Age of Geek Media. They also covered it as well. So you just get all sorts of Guardians content, you guys.
How lucky are you? Very, very lucky.
Who's good girl?
Please don't take that out of context.
Thanks for listening.
We'd love to have you join in on the discussion on our Discord, discord.com/ageofgeek. So join us. And yes, thanks for listening.
Discord.ageofgeek.com. There's no slashes.
I'm glad you're here.
Okay, thanks guys. Bye. I'm going to do the outro.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.